You won't believe what happened when a millionaire walked into a small-town diner and saw his ex-wife pregnant, working as a waitress. Stay with me until the end, hit that like button, and subscribe right now, because this story will leave you breathless. The bell above the glass door jingled, letting in the smell of wet asphalt and cheap coffee. Alex Carter, dressed in a tailored navy suit that screamed money even when he didn't, stepped inside. He wasn't supposed to be here. His business meetings were in New York, his penthouse was in Manhattan, his cars slept in garages that cost more than this entire street. But a wrong turn and an empty stomach had dragged him into this little place with its faded menu boards and linoleum floor that had seen better decades. He ordered nothing at first, just scanned the room with the detached look of a man who had conquered every room he'd ever walked into. And then his gaze froze. There she was, Sophia. The woman he had once sworn he couldn't live without. The woman who had walked out of his life 5 years ago without giving him the explanation he thought he deserved. Her hair was tied back in a simple bun, no makeup on her face, an apron hugging her waist, and in front of it, her belly, round and unmistakable. She was pregnant. For a second, Alex thought he was hallucinating. His ex-wife, here, serving tables, carrying another man's child. The contrast hit him like a punch to the gut. He was worth over $200 million now, his name listed in glossy magazines, invited to charity galas, envied by men who would never catch up. And yet, the sight of her, balancing a tray of greasy plates, made all that success feel strangely hollow. "Good morning," she said softly, not recognizing him at first as she placed silverware on his table. Her voice. He remembered that voice. It was the same tone she'd used when she used to wake him up in their cramped first apartment, long before the money. Then her eyes lifted, and the tray almost slipped from her hands. "Alex!" It was barely a whisper, but it cut through the clatter of forks and the hiss of the coffee machine like a scream. She froze, every muscle tense. He leaned back in the booth, crossing his arms, letting the silence between them stretch. "Well," he finally said, a cold smile tugging at his lips. "This is unexpected." Her cheeks flushed. She tried to recover, pulling the notepad from her apron pocket. What would you like to order?" He studied her with the calculating eyes that once closed deals worth millions. The apron was stained, her shoes worn. She looked tired, fragile. But there was something else, something unbroken, and it irritated him. "I'll take a black coffee," he said, his voice low. "Unless, of course, you're too busy." Her lips parted as if to answer, but she shut them quickly and scribbled on the pad. She turned to leave, but his words stopped her. "So," Alex said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "Congratulations. Didn't think you'd settle down so quickly after everything." His eyes darted deliberately toward her stomach. The color drained from her face. She clutched the notepad tighter, her knuckles white. "It's none of your business." He chuckled bitterly. "Right, none of my business, just my ex-wife, pregnant, serving fries in a diner. Tell me, Sophia, is this what you left me for?" She flinched as if he'd slapped her. Around them, customers pretended not to listen, but their ears were tuned to every word. The air grew heavy, the kind of silence that made people shift uncomfortably in their seats. She drew in a shaky breath, steadied herself, and replied with a calmness he didn't expect. "Enjoy your coffee, Alex." She turned and walked away, her steps careful, her back straight despite the weight she carried. He watched her go, his jaw clenched, his thoughts a storm. This wasn't the Sophia he remembered, and this definitely wasn't the end of their conversation. Alex sat in the booth with his untouched coffee, the steam curling up like a reminder that reality wasn't going anywhere. His chest felt tight, but not from the bitterness of the brew. It was the sight of Sophia moving from table to table, smiling politely at strangers, carrying plates, wiping counters. She looked nothing like the woman he remembered, and yet everything about her still pulled him back. Memories crept in, uninvited. The first time he had seen her, back when he was nothing but a broke college graduate hustling odd jobs. She was working in a bookstore, her hair falling into her face as she shelved paperbacks. He had walked in to buy a used finance manual he couldn't really afford, and she had handed it to him with a grin that made him forget the price. Back then, they hadn't cared about money. They cared about dreams, about the way late-night noodles could taste like feasts when you were in love. It was Sophia who stayed up with him when he sketched out his first business plan on napkins. Sophia, who lent him her laptop because he couldn't afford one. Sophia, who cheered when he closed his first deal, even though the profit barely paid rent. She was his anchor, his partner, his everything, until she walked out. Or so he thought. He remembered the night clearly, a fight, harsh words. She had accused him of caring more about contracts than about her. He had accused her of being ungrateful, and then, the next morning, she was gone. No note, no call, nothing. He woke up to an empty apartment and an ache that burned hotter than hunger. For years, Alex told himself the same story. She had left him for someone with more stability, more money, more promise. And when his empire grew, first one deal, then 10, then hundreds, he used her absence as fuel. He told himself he didn't need her, that she had betrayed him. That success was the only answer. But seeing her now, pregnant, serving strangers, it didn't add up. If she'd left him for a better life, this wasn't it. Unless she had truly fallen. Unless she had made every wrong choice. Unless she was paying the price. He couldn't resist. When she came back to his table to refill his cup, he leaned forward. So tell me, Sophia, who's the lucky guy? The father of your child? He must be thrilled to see you working double shifts. Her hand trembled slightly as she poured the coffee, but her voice stayed calm. I told you, Alex, it's none of your business. He smirked, masking the sting her words left behind. Oh, I think it is. You see, you were my wife once, and I deserve to know why you traded in penthouses for pancakes. Her eyes met his, steady and unflinching. Not everything in life is about money. That cut deeper than she could imagine. Money was all he had built himself on. Money was what had justified every sacrifice, every sleepless night. To hear her dismiss it so easily, it was infuriating. You're right, he said coldly. Sometimes it's about loyalty, and you threw that away. Her lips parted, but she closed them again, as though the weight of her silence carried more than words ever could. She turned and walked to the counter, leaving him alone with his bitterness. Alex sat back, forcing himself to breathe, his heart hammered with old rage, old confusion. He wanted to hate her, to dismiss her as a mistake, but the way she carried herself, even now, refused to fit the story he had built in his head. As he left the diner that morning, he swore it wasn't the last time he would see her. Something was wrong, and whether she wanted it or not, he was going to uncover the truth. The following morning, Alex woke earlier than usual. His calendar was stacked with meetings, but his mind wasn't on investors or contracts. It was on a diner off a quiet road, and on a woman who once carried his last name. Instead of heading to his Manhattan office, he drove back to that small town. His black sedan looked out of place on the cracked streets, gleaming like a visitor from another world. He parked across from the diner and sat for a moment, staring through the windshield at the windows fogged from the morning rush. Inside, he could see her moving between tables, balancing plates with the same grace she once brought into his chaotic apartment. Something inside him twisted. He told himself it was curiosity, nothing more. He needed answers. He needed to know why she was here, pregnant, when 5 years ago she had walked out on him without explanation. He stepped inside, drawing a few stares from regulars who clearly weren't used to suits that cost more than their cars. Sophia glanced up, froze, then forced herself to keep working. She didn't come to his table, didn't offer a word. She moved on as though he wasn't there. That only sharpened his resolve. When she disappeared into the back, Alex approached the counter where a middle-aged manager wiped cups with a rag. "Excuse me," Alex said smoothly, lowering his voice to the tone he used when closing high-stake deals. "The waitress, Sophia. How long has she been working here?" The manager eyed him warily. "A couple of months. Why do you ask?" Alex tapped the counter lightly. "Just curious. She seems different, reliable." The man nodded. "She's one of the best we've had. Shows up early, stays late, never complains. People here like her. Can't say that about everyone." Alex frowned. That didn't fit the picture he had painted of a woman who had abandoned him. He left the diner and walked around town. It didn't take long before he overheard things. A neighbor speaking kindly about Sophia helping her carry groceries. A cashier saying Sophia never missed a bill, even if it meant skipping lunch herself. A tired nurse who mentioned Sophia volunteering at the local clinic on weekends. The more Alex listened, the more unsettled he became. If she had left him out of greed or selfishness, then why was she living like this? Why was she admired for her kindness when he had spent years convincing himself she was nothing but betrayal? Back in his hotel room that night, Alex paced in silence. He poured himself a glass of whiskey but barely touched it. His thoughts were locked on the swell of her stomach, the unmistakable curve of pregnancy. The image wouldn't leave him. Whose child was it? He tried to shake the thought away, telling himself it didn't matter. She was someone else's problem now. But deep inside, jealousy gnawed at him. The idea of Sophia carrying another man's child burned hotter than any boardroom defeat. Late into the night, he stared at the ceiling, his mind refusing to rest. His fortune suddenly felt meaningless. All the skyscrapers, the magazines, the applause. What did it matter if he couldn't answer the one question tormenting him? By the time dawn broke, Alex had made a decision. He wasn't walking away. He would get the truth out of her, one way or another. And yet, as he stood by the window watching the small town wake up, another thought slipped in, uninvited. A thought he hadn't dared to entertain in years. What if he had been wrong all along? What if she hadn't betrayed him, but sacrificed herself for reasons he never understood? The idea shook him, but he couldn't dismiss it. He clenched his jaw, shoved his hands into his pockets, and whispered to himself, "I'll find out, no matter what it takes. But now I want to ask you, if you were in Alex's position, suddenly finding your ex in this situation, what would you do? Would you walk away or demand answers?" The next evening, Alex returned to the diner. He told himself it was coincidence, that he happened to be nearby, but deep down, he knew the truth. He couldn't stop thinking about her. He couldn't stop wondering whose child she carried, why she was living like this, and why she had left him all those years ago. The diner was quieter now, the rush gone. Sophia was wiping down tables, her movements tired but precise. The apron clung to her frame, and she shifted her weight carefully, as if every step reminded her of the new life she carried. Alex waited until she passed his booth, then spoke in a voice firm enough to leave no room for evasion. "We need to talk." She froze, turned her head slightly, but didn't meet his eyes. "There's nothing to talk about." "Don't do that," he pressed. "Don't pretend like this doesn't matter. I deserve to know." She set the rag on the table, finally facing him. Her eyes were tired, lined with shadows that hadn't been there years ago. "What do you think you deserve, Alex? You think just because you wear a suit worth more than this place, you can demand answers?" He leaned forward, his jaw tight. "I deserve to know whose child that is. Is it his? Did you leave me for him?" Her face twisted, hurt flashing in her expression. "You think everything comes down to betrayal and money. You haven't changed." "I changed enough to build an empire," he shot back, "while you—" His eyes swept around the diner, cruel in their precision. "Ended up here." The words landed like daggers, but she didn't flinch. Instead, she crossed her arms, her voice low but steady. "Not everything is about the empire you worship." Her calmness rattled him more than anger would have. He wanted her to scream, to confess, to break, but she didn't. She turned and walked away, leaving him with his fury. That night, Alex couldn't sleep. He booked a room in town, unable to return to the city without answers. Restless, he drove by the diner after closing and saw her leaving with a grocery bag in one hand, the other bracing her back. She walked slowly down a narrow street, heading toward a dimly lit building with peeling paint and rusted stairs. She climbed to the second floor and disappeared inside. Alex sat in his car, staring at the window that glowed faintly with weak light. He imagined the inside, small, cramped, nothing like the penthouse they once shared. Hours later, when most of the town was asleep, he was still there, watching, thinking. The next morning, determined, he returned. He waited outside the diner until she arrived, hair pulled back, face pale but resolute. When she saw him, her steps faltered. "What do you want, Alex?" "Answers." His voice was quieter now, but no less insistent. "Tell me who the father is." She tightened her grip on her bag. "It's none of your business." "Yes, it is," he said, stepping closer. "It's my business because you left me without a word. Because I spent years wondering why. Because you look at me like I'm the villain when you're the one who walked away." For the first time, her composure cracked. Tears welled in her eyes, but she blinked them back. "You wouldn't understand." "Make me understand," he urged. Her lips trembled, but she shook her head. "No, not now. Not here. She pushed past him, entering the diner, leaving him standing in the cold morning air. Alex clenched his fists, the frustration boiling in his veins. But beneath the anger was something heavier. Doubt. The certainty he had carried for 5 years, that she had betrayed him, was unraveling. He wasn't ready to admit it yet, but deep down, he felt it. There was more to the story, and he was going to uncover it, no matter how much it hurt. Alex didn't leave town. Something inside him refused to let go, as though every unanswered question was a stone pressing against his chest. He spent his days pacing hotel corridors, his nights staring at the ceiling, imagining Sophia's tired face, her swollen belly, her silence that screamed louder than words. On the 3rd day, he ran into someone he never expected. It was Mark, an old college friend, one of the few who had seen Alex and Sophia together when life was still simple, when dinners were instant noodles and dreams were bigger than wallets. Mark looked older now, his hair thinner, his eyes lined with the weight of years. They crossed paths outside a hardware store, and recognition flickered instantly. "Alex Carter," Mark said slowly, as though testing if it was really him. "Didn't think I'd ever see you back here." Alex forced a smile. "Business brought me close. I stopped by the diner, saw Sophia." At the mention of her name, Mark's expression darkened. He shifted uncomfortably, glancing around as though checking who might be listening. "So you know?" "Know what?" Alex's voice sharpened. Mark exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. "Look, man, it's not my story to tell." Alex's hand shot out, gripping Mark's shoulder. "Don't play games with me. I've spent 5 years not knowing. You were around back then. You saw what happened. So tell me." Mark hesitated, but something in Alex's eyes must have convinced him. He sighed deeply. "You always thought she left because she didn't love you anymore, right? Because she found something better?" Alex's jaw tightened. "That's what it looked like?" Mark shook his head. "That's not the truth. Sophia left because she had to. Because staying with you would have destroyed you both." The words hit Alex like a slap. "What are you talking about?" Mark's gaze hardened. "Back then, when your first contracts started taking off, you made enemies, people you never even knew by name, investors who lost money when you succeeded, partners who felt cheated. There were threats, Alex. Sophia never told you, but she got messages, calls, people watching her outside your apartment." Alex's stomach turned. No. She would have told me." "She didn't," Mark replied quietly. "Because she knew you. She knew you'd fight back, make it worse. She thought the only way to protect you was to leave, to make you hate her, to cut herself out of your life so you'd be untouchable." The street around them blurred. Alex's mind reeled. He remembered the silence of their apartment after she left, the emptiness he could never explain. He had told himself it was betrayal, but what if it had been sacrifice? His voice cracked. "You're saying she gave up everything? For me?" Mark nodded. "And she's been paying for it ever since, working jobs that barely keep the lights on, alone, carrying more than you'll ever know." For a long moment, Alex couldn't speak. Rage, guilt, and disbelief churned inside him. He wanted to deny it, to cling to the story he had told himself for years. But deep down, he knew Mark wasn't lying. And then another thought struck him like lightning. The child. His chest tightened. His pulse raced. He swallowed hard, his throat dry. "Mark, the baby. Do you know?" Mark's eyes softened with pity. "Alex, I think you already know the answer." The world seemed to tilt beneath Alex's feet. He staggered back a step, his mind spinning. Could it be? After all this time, after all the hate, all the distance, the child was his. Alex didn't wait. The moment Mark's words settled into his chest like burning coals, he knew he couldn't go another hour without confronting her. His car practically flew down the narrow streets until it screeched to a stop in front of the diner. The neon sign buzzed faintly in the twilight, casting pale light over cracked pavement. Through the window, he saw her, apron-tied, hair pulled back, shoulders hunched in quiet exhaustion. He pushed the door open, the bell jingling like an omen. She looked up, her eyes widening as she saw him striding toward her, with a determination she hadn't seen in years. Before she could speak, before she could put up walls, he stopped in front of her. "We're not doing this anymore," Alex said, his voice shaking, though not from weakness. No more lies, no more silence. I know the truth. Sophia blinked, her lips parting, but no sound came. She tried to retreat behind her professional mask, glancing toward the manager, toward the few remaining customers. This isn't the place. It is, Alex insisted, because if I leave here tonight without answers, I'll lose my mind. His eyes softened, but his tone stayed firm. Is the baby mine? The air seemed to freeze. Sophia's hand tightened around the order pad, her knuckles white. Tears welled but didn't fall. Her voice was so faint, it barely carried over the clatter of dishes. Yes. Alex closed his eyes for a second, the confirmation crashing into him like a tidal wave. Relief, rage, grief. Every emotion he had buried for years roared back. He opened his eyes again, locking on her trembling form. Why didn't you tell me? Finally, her walls cracked. She stepped back, her breath hitching, her voice breaking. Because I had to protect you. Don't you see? They threatened me, Alex. They said if I stayed with you, they'd ruin everything. Your business, your future, maybe even your life. I couldn't let that happen. So I left. I made you hate me because that was the only way you'd be safe. Her words poured out like poison she'd been holding for too long. She pressed a hand against her belly, tears streaking her cheeks. I carried this alone because I thought it was the only way. I didn't want to drag you into danger. I didn't want them to use me against you. Alex felt the ground shift beneath him. He reached out instinctively, but she pulled back, her shoulders rigid. Sophia, his voice cracked. All this time, I thought you betrayed me. I thought you chose someone else. Her sob was soft, bitter. I chose you, Alex. I chose your life over mine, and it cost me everything. The diner was silent now. Even the manager had stopped wiping counters, pretending to busy himself behind the register. Alex didn't care who was watching. His world had collapsed into the woman in front of him. He stepped closer, lowering his voice to something raw, almost pleading. I never stopped loving you. Her eyes lifted, red and shimmering with disbelief. You shouldn't say that. Not now. But it's the truth, he said. I hated you for leaving, but I never stopped. And knowing now what you carried alone. His throat tightened, his eyes burned. I don't deserve you, but I swear to you, I will never let you fight this alone again. Not you, not our child. Sophia shook her head, torn between hope and fear. You don't know what you're promising. They haven't gone away. They could still... I don't care, Alex interrupted firmly. Let them come. I've built more than just an empire. I can protect you now. I should have protected you then. For the first time in years, silence stretched between them, not as a wall, but as a fragile bridge. Sophia clutched her stomach, her tears softening into quiet sobs, and for a flicker of a moment, Alex saw the woman he had once held every night, the woman who had sacrificed everything for him, and he knew, with a certainty that left no room for doubt, that he would do anything to earn her back. The rain had started outside, tapping gently against the diner's windows as if the world itself wanted to listen. Alex sat across from Sophia in the booth she had reluctantly slid into, her hands folded protectively over her stomach. He leaned forward, his face stripped of arrogance, of pride, of the armor he had worn for years. I know I can't erase the past, he began, his voice steady but low. I can't give back the years you spent alone, the nights you cried yourself to sleep. But I can promise you this, from this moment on, you will never carry anything alone again. Sophia's lips trembled, her eyes flicked to the window as though searching for an escape. But then she looked back at him, and what she saw in his face stopped her. There was no game, no cold calculation. There was only truth. Alex, her voice was fragile, almost broken. I don't know if I can trust you again. I don't know if I can believe in us after everything. He reached across the table, covering her hand with his. His touch was warm, familiar, grounding. Then let me earn it. Not with words, but with actions. Let me be here, for you, for our child. Give me the chance to fight for what I should have fought for years ago. Tears slid silently down her cheeks. She wanted to resist, to cling to the walls she had built so carefully. But his hand didn't let go. His gaze didn't waver. And somewhere deep inside, beneath the scars and the fear, the Sophia who had once believed in him stirred. Her other hand slid over his, tentative, hesitant. "I'm scared," she whispered. "So am I," Alex admitted. "But maybe that's how we know it matters." The rain grew heavier, but the world inside that booth became still. For the first time since their lives had torn apart, they sat together not as enemies, not as strangers, but as two broken people trying to mend what fate had shattered. Hours passed unnoticed. They talked. Not about money, not about betrayal, but about small things. About how she had managed the apartment on her own. About how she craved strawberries at midnight. About how he still couldn't sleep without music in the background. Each word stitched them closer, piece by fragile piece. When they finally stepped outside, the storm had softened to a drizzle. The street lamps glowed against the wet pavement, and Alex held his coat over Sophia's shoulders. She leaned into him, hesitant but real, and for the first time in years, he felt whole. He stopped under the awning, turned to her, and spoke the words that had been burning in his chest all night. "Marry me again? Let's start over. This time, no lies, no secrets, just us." Sophia gasped, covering her mouth with her hand. Her heart hammered so loudly she was sure he could hear it. She wanted to say no, to remind him of all the pain, of all the reasons it could never work. But when she looked into his eyes, into the same eyes that had once dreamed with her on a broken couch, she saw the truth. He meant it. Her answer was soft, but it carried more power than any scream. Yes. In that moment, as the rain washed the streets clean, Alex knew his empire meant nothing compared to what he had just regained. And Sophia, trembling but smiling through tears, knew she had finally found her home again. Their hands entwined, their hearts scarred but beating in sync, they walked into the night, not as millionaires or waitresses, not as broken lovers, but as a family. And now, I want to ask you, if you were in Sophia's place, would you forgive and start over, or would you walk away forever? Tell me in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe and like, because more stories like this are coming your way.